Okay guys, so welcome to Module 5 of the IELTS Grammar course, and today we're going to look at a very common problem, a very common mistake that people make is subject-verb agreement. So what are we going to do in this module? We're going to look at the general rules, we're going to look at common problems, and most of these common problems are exceptions to the general rules. We're going to look at checklists, and we've got a diagram and things that you can use in order to get it clear in your head what you're doing. And we're also going to look at a sample paragraph that has lots of mistakes in it. And those mistakes are things that we've already done in the course so far. So things like articles, verb-subject agreement, uncountable nouns, things like that we've already done, just to show you what these mistakes look like in a real paragraph and how you could fix them and the difference it makes to a paragraph if you can fix these little small mistakes. Because the danger is, and many of you might be thinking this right now, maybe not, but let me know if you are thinking this. Many of you might be thinking, these are just really small mistakes, and they're not big mistakes, and it doesn't make any difference. So the sample paragraph I'm going to show you, I just took it randomly from a real essay, just to show you the difference that fixing these little small mistakes makes to the coherence and the quality of your whole essay. So what is verb-subject agreement or subject-verb agreement? There is a subject in a sentence and a verb in a sentence. For example, the baby cries. All right, so the baby is the subject and cries is the verb. So sentences have a subject and they have a verb. The subject and the verb must agree, so they must get along, they must click into place together. The baby cries. All right, so the baby, singular, cries, singular. All right, so cries is the singular verb, singular form of the verb cry, and baby is the singular version of the noun baby. The babies cry. So babies is plural, cry is also plural. So plural goes with plural, singular goes with singular, and if you do that, they agree and everyone's happy. So using the Lego analogy again, why is this important? It's important because certain parts of the sentence must agree with each other. Just like certain parts of Lego, if you put two parts of Lego that don't agree with each other, you're not going to be able to put them together. They just don't work. The same with a sentence. If you have a subject and a verb that don't agree with each other, then the whole sentence doesn't work together. It's difficult to understand. A native English speaker will look at it and think that it looks strange, and it's difficult to understand if it is like that. But if everything agrees together, singular goes with singular, plural goes with plural, and everything works together, then you get a nice sentence that makes sense to everybody. So like everything, keep it simple. They simply must agree. So there are exceptions, there are many different exceptions, but don't get too bogged down in the exceptions. What happens a lot with grammar is let's say there's a rule that covers 95% of instances, and then there are 100 different exceptions, but those 100 different exceptions only cover 5% of uses of that. So instead of people just looking at the 95% and thinking, okay, just keep it simple, just do this one thing, what they do is they will look at all of the different exceptions, and that's not a waste of time, but just be aware of the balance that you have to get. Focus on the most important rules, focus on the most important exceptions, and I'm not saying completely forget about the other exceptions, but for the purposes of IELTS, maybe don't focus on them too much. Ignore the other parts of the sentence. So when you are thinking about subject-verb agreement, all you are thinking about is the subject and the verb. All the other things in the sentence, you can look at them after you have decided what you're going to do for subject-verb agreement. But if you look at all the other parts of the sentence, it might get a little bit confusing. And there are exceptions. Like everything with grammar, there are exceptions, and you just have to get comfortable with that. And I know that this is an extremely frustrating thing to learn. It's like, okay, so there's these general rules, and now you're telling me I have to look at all these exceptions. Just relax a little bit about the exceptions, because if you focus too much on the exceptions, you'll get bogged down and you'll get demotivated. So why are these confusing? Why do people make mistakes with verb-subject agreement? So let's look at this one. Those watches look expensive. So the plural form of the verb has no S on the end of it. So it looks weird, it looks strange to a learner. So they look at the verb look and there's no S on the end, but it's plural. So that is a little bit confusing for people, because if you just followed the normal rules of English and you were just looking at all the different rules of English, you would assume that it would be watches is plural, then it should be looks with an S, because normally we put S on plural things. But for subject-verb agreement, when a verb is plural, it normally has no S on the end. The watch looks expensive. So the singular form of the verb has an S on the end. So this is the confusing part. The plural version of the verb has no S. The singular version of the verb has an S. I know English is a confusing language. It's a stupid language at times. It doesn't make any sense. And there are many, many different reasons why this is so, historical reasons that we're not going to get into. But if you are aware of this confusing fact, then you'll be able to overcome it. But this is why they are a little bit confusing. To many learners, this seems weird, because what they're doing is they're looking at lots of nouns, and when they look at nouns, most nouns have an S on the end when they're plural. So students automatically assume, okay, if nouns have a plural S on it, then I can just do that with verbs. Not the case. So here's a little checklist that you can think of. Some people like checklists, some people like visuals, so I'm just going to give you a couple of different things so that you can get it clear in your head. So the first thing you have to think about is, what is the subject? All right, so find the subject in the sentence. Is the subject singular or plural? If it is singular, you're going to use a singular verb. If it is plural, you are going to use a plural verb. Very simple so far. Are there any notable exceptions? If you look at it and no, there are no notable exceptions, then it just stays the same. If there are notable exceptions, and we're going to look at some of them in this lesson, then yes, you'll change it to the other way around. All right, so very simple, just checklist. Where is the subject? Is it singular or plural? If there are no exceptions, use the singular. If it's no exceptions, use the plural. If there are exceptions, change it around. Logic of subject-verb agreement. So I like using these little logic charts. What is a subject? If it's plural, use a plural verb. If it is singular, use a singular verb. All right, keep it simple like that. There is a much more, well, I'll just show it to you. This one that I created, which takes into account exceptions. If this is just too much for you and you're like, oh, I don't like it, it's not essential. But if you're the type of person like me who likes logic and likes visual things, this might help. So what is the subject? Plural. Okay, it's plural. Any exceptions? Yes, there are exceptions. If there is an exception to a plural verb, it is singular. If there's no exceptions, it's plural. What is the subject? It's singular. Are there any exceptions? Yes, it's plural. No, it's singular. Okay, just pause. Maybe if you want to get your head around that. It's pretty simple once you think about it. But just thought I'd throw that in there. So common mistakes. Let's look at some common mistakes so that you can recognize these common mistakes. And most of these common mistakes are to do with exceptions to the rule, because for most of you, you will be able to identify, okay, it's a plural subject, and I just have to write a plural verb, and you know what a plural verb is. Where you get into trouble are the exceptions. And we're not going to look at every single exception because, you know, we want to have a life, and we're going to look at the ones that come up mostly in IELTS writing. So third person singular. So I believe you are wrong. She or he believes you are wrong. So when we're using a third person singular, she or he, we would use the singular form, all right, rather than the plural form of believes or the verb. They believe you are wrong. So third person plural, they, we go back to the plural version of the verb, believe. So I see a lot of people talking about that and writing about that when they're generally you're avoiding these personal pronouns and things like that, but sometimes they do come up, and I see some people making that mistake. So just be wary of when you're talking about he or she. Common mistake number 2. When the following are used with the main verb. So if you're using is or are or was or were or has or have, the boy has talked to me. The boys have talked to me. So you see the difference there. So any of these, if you're not really, if any of them you're not 100% sure of, don't just keep going with the video. Pause the video, have a look at it, think about why is it an exception, how it has changed, and take your time with it. What a lot of people do is just let the video play and not really think about what's happening. You might have to think about these a couple of times, or watch the video a couple of times or 3 times, but you will get it. They are just basic rules, and they're very logical. Common mistake number 3, use of modal verbs. So if you're using can, could, should, may, might, will, would, or must, the dog could have killed me. The dogs could have killed me. So we're not changing it there. All right. So logically, you should think it should be the dogs could kill me, or the dog coulds have killed me. But because we are using these modal verbs, we're not changing it there. All right. Mistake number 4, irregular subjects may confuse some students. So if the subject is irregular, it might confuse you. The man looks at the car. The boys look at the car. The men look at the car. So men is irregular. So many people might look at this and say, all right, it's got no S on it. And they might say the men looks at the car, or the man look at the car. So be careful when your subject is an irregular noun. So if it is an irregular noun, we talked about irregular and regular nouns in the module about uncountable and countable nouns, so just be careful with them. Common mistake number 5. Indefinite pronouns such as each, everyone, nobody, someone. So I like ice cream. Everyone likes ice cream. Nobody likes ice cream. So a lot of people might make the mistake of saying everybody like ice cream or nobody like ice cream. But because it is using an indefinite pronoun, each, everyone, nobody, someone, then we change it. Common mistake number 6, uncountable nouns. The news is interesting. So some people would say the news are interesting. The furniture is interesting. So some people might make the mistake and say the furniture are interesting, or they might say the furnitures are interesting. So just combining verb-subject agreement with uncountable nouns, countable nouns, be very careful there with them. So let's look at this example paragraph. This is a real paragraph that I took from a real essay that a student submitted to me. What I'd like you to do is I want you to pause the video and think about a couple of things. Think about first, is it easy to understand? Is it easy to understand what they're trying to say? Also, I want you to think about the mistakes that they're making. Are they making random mistakes, or are they making the same mistakes again and again and again? Please pause the video and read it and think about those 2 things. It's really important that you do that. So I have corrected some things for you just to make it show you a few things. So the main problem associated with the increasing number of private vehicles is air pollution. The roads of developing countries are not built to accommodate heavy traffic, which leads to traffic jams because roads are too narrow and not maintained properly. Consequently, this uncontrolled traffic congestion leads to air pollution when these vehicles produce fumes and release particulates, such as nitrogen oxide and carbon dioxide from the burning fuel, damaging the quality of the air, which negatively impacts on the health of the people. For example, in India, the majority of people living in metro cities suffer from asthma or bronchitis-like breathing problems due to air pollution. So compare this one with this one. So even though there are how many? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. There's 18 mistakes in that. But most of the mistakes come from three categories. All right, they're articles, uncountable nouns, and subject-verb agreement. Three things that we've done already on this course. If this person just fixed those three problems, how much better would the writing be? It would be infinitely better if they just fixed those problems, if they were aware of those problems, if they were aware of the rules of those problems, and they were aware that they were the mistakes that they were making. So if they were going through the course, their knowledge of these three areas is going to improve anyway. It's going to improve, so they're going to make fewer mistakes of these three things in the essay. But whenever they're checking their work, they will be aware that they're making these three mistakes, and they'll be able to check their work and fix those mistakes and improve their sentences. So what are your main weaknesses? So hopefully by this stage you'll be aware of the things that are not a problem, but more importantly the things that are a problem, and you will see the difference in your writing if you fix those mistakes. So the next module is ing plus to infinitive. Hope that you find that useful. Not the most complicated area of grammar, I don't think, so that's why the video wasn't as long as it normally would be. I don't really see the point in creating a very long video for something that's not as taxing or not as hard as the other areas. But hopefully you find that useful. Think about the checklist that I've given you. It's pretty simple to what is the subject. If it's plural, match it with a plural verb. If it's singular, match it with a singular verb. But also keep in mind the most important exceptions. So it should be easy enough to memorize those important exceptions. Do your work. If you're having those problems, think about why you're having those problems and fix them. All right, see you in the next module. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.